I'm Tom Mennier, and you're listening to CVS Podcast. A two-way Q&A with David Ross and Tom Mennier. Here is part 4 of a 5-part series in which David and Tom discuss each other's questions on matters of theological and cultural concern. A two-way Q&A, part 4. Questions on science, religion, and authority. Is science the highest form of knowledge, and is the current war on religion an overall positive thing for humanity's advancement?
Science is the highest thing. God is science. Big S science. Underneath that science, we have theology. Then underneath that, we have philosophy. And then we have the natural sciences, which are very low. And underneath the natural sciences, we have all kinds of social sciences and all kinds of nonsense, which all contain truth, and they're all valid in their own way, and they're all an admixture of lies and errors, too, as are the natural sciences and philosophy and theology. Okay, only God is pure, only God is true science, only God is perfect in that way, and absolute science. Okay, so yes, science is good. I worship science. But I don't worship Fauci, I don't worship the man-made nonsense that's pushed on us as science. The scientism, in a pejorative sense, is a religion. It is a satanic, worldly approach. It's basically pride masquerading as wisdom. That's what I would say about that. So the second part of your question was to do with the war on religion.
Yes.
I encourage everyone to go deeper and deeper into whatever your worldview is. If you're a Catholic, then improve your walk with God in being a better and better Catholic. If you're an Orthodox, be as good an Orthodox as you can be. If you're a Protestant, be the best Protestant you can be. If you're an agnostic or an atheist or whatever you are, or if you're a Satanist, examine what is your Satanism, what does it teach, what is it all about? Live it to the maximum, to the fullest, and not only live it and accept it, but question every single doctrine of your worldview, whether it's atheism, Satanism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, whatever it is. Examine it, take it seriously, dive into it, live it fully, question it, and when you find out that it's a false worldview, adjust, adapt, change, and go higher and higher and higher. And as you distinguish baby from bathwater, you will end up worshiping the baby that is the baby Jesus.
Okay, good. Yes, and as you can see, my wording of this question is, this is not a question that I wrote, but I plagiarized and stole from the straw man, the bucket list of straw man arguments typically we hear all around us. And there is a war on religion. There is a war against what is seen as a barbaric, unevolved, superstitious kind of bad seed in humanity that is a relic of our unevolved past, and it's time to do away with it and all this stuff. And your answer was, again, beautifully said. The use of the word war in my question, the current war on religion, what I take from your answer is that you're changing the meaning of the word war into something that I agree with. In other words, this isn't really a war, just as the free marketeers that have morphed into world monopolies are not big fans of competition. They despise competition. They want to kill the competition. And the people that are warring against religion do not want to truly war with it, which means to wrestle with it, really. They wanted to get rid of it. And so what I take from your answer is that wherever you stand on something, you have to wrestle with it. It's your responsibility. If you believe in anything, whatever it is, you have to examine it. You have to war with yourself, with your own wishful thinking. And then when you want to reject something, the war continues, because then you are going to open yourself up to cross-examination from the forces of life all around you, and you'll have to answer to that. So it's not about believe this or you're wrong, or it's more about standing up for your beliefs as an advocate, as a lawyer, defending it. Know what the heck you're getting into. So when we come up against people with radically different beliefs than what we have, we put them on the judgment seat too, just as they would do to us. Help them examine their... This is the beauty of human dialogue, and that's the whole point of it. We're here to explore and to hopefully egg each other on towards the truth. And any kind of censorship or clamping down on free speech because such and such ideas are dangerous, this should set off alarm bells to anyone who's paid attention and has a modicum of understanding of human history. Also, if your enemy is flying off the mouth and speaking, let him speak. Ask for more of it. They're going to create their own rope to hang themselves with. Let them out with it and listen. But always be able to defend your position. Life is a pretty serious project. We're given minds, we're given consciousness, and there's forces in this world that are pushing us towards this kind of faith in this world whereby we allow others to do our thinking for us. And we parrot whatever is comforting and confirming our biases and whatnot, so that we can basically just go along to get along and hopefully get through this life with as minimum pain or challenge as possible. The opposite way, I think, is the way that we are called to do as human beings.
What Pascal said about faith and reason, it's a false dichotomy. And this is what the war on religion is pretending to be, a dichotomy between faith and reason. But there's a third element which Pascal mentioned, and which I emphasized in one of my meta episodes. It's called doubt, faith, and reason, because doubt is an essential part of our self-examination. If we lack doubt,
that's it.
We're going to be fanatical in one of many ways.
Yes.
If we lack reason, if we lack faith, they're all deficiencies that we need to be concerned about. We need to be alert and to say, do I have a sufficient and well-balanced and sane amount of doubt and faith and reason, each in its own measure in its proper place, in order to have a healthy, balanced worldview. So if you're lacking any of them, you need to address that. And in order to assess yourself, you're going to have to confront yourself internally with internal examination or through dialogue and confrontation. How do you know that Pope Francis is the vicar of Christ?
Well, I do not. I don't know. I was talking to my friend just the other day, by coincidence, about my idea of starting a new Catholic church. We need a new Reformation, folks. We need a new Martin Luther, but with a totally different type of Reformation. And that new Martin Luther is Tom Mennier. And I'm going to create a popeless Catholic church. The Catholic Church without the Pope.
It's the Orthodox Church.
Yes, well, not quite, because there's certain things about the schism between Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, as you know, had something to do with the Pope, but it had a lot more to do with just the Pope. There were some dogmatic changes. I love the Catholic dogma. I love the Catechism. I love the intellectual and spiritual sweat and substance of Aquinas and Augustine and so on. But I'm not convinced that Christ or God endorses the Vatican. I'm not convinced of that. And while I do have my favorite popes, as everyone does, and there's been some remarkable examples in the papacy throughout the history of Rome, but I'm not convinced that Francis is an authentic vicar of Christ. Now, there is, as you know, a raging schism within the Catholic Church over Pope Francis. And it's kind of framed as like the trads pitted against the progressives, if you will, or the conservatives pitted against the liberals within the church. But I think that this divide, or defining the divide on these terms, kind of misses the point. Pope Francis seems to be too busy making friends with the world, which doesn't strike me as very Christian. As the Gospel of John stated very clearly, and Christ himself in his many parables, do not attach yourself to the ways of the world. You cannot get to a transcendent truth unless you detach yourself, A, from your ego, and also from the busyness and the noise of this world and what other people are thinking, etc. There really needs to be a solitude and a will to hear the voice of God, which is being drowned out by the clutter and the noise and the drama down here on earth. So when I say Pope Francis is becoming too friendly with the world, it means that he's not taking that manly stand that a true vicar of Christ must do to defend and proclaim the life-saving truth of the gospel. Now, I am willing to concede that the positive side of Pope Francis is that he speaks in words of compassion and accommodation, and that he perhaps is a little less stern and admonishing towards people in sinful lifestyles or what have you.
His motto is go to the margins.
Go to the margins, which is, of course, we have to go to the margins, but we want to bring them to the foot of the cross. As ministers of God and as the ultimate, the vicar of Christ, the head of the Catholic Church, the responsibility is to bring people to Christ, to bring them to the foot of the cross. Now, if someone is deep in another direction, you want to bring them to the foot of the cross. Well, Christ was the example. He had the power, the ability to see and know a person right away, so that as a great teacher, because he was a great teacher, but he was much more than a great teacher. He was the Son of God. And it's only proper and appropriate and right that he would have this intelligence and this insight into the human character and to the individual that he was dealing with, which enabled him to tailor his parables and his lessons precisely in a way that this or that given person or this or that different crowd would get it. He didn't have a formula. He didn't preach to everyone the same way. He preached in a way that could reach them. And he didn't make agreement with their sins. He didn't go along to get along. He didn't say, believe whatever you want as long as we're nice to each other. This is not what he preached at all. And so I would expect the vicar of Christ and the head of the Catholic Church to follow that example and to give me a convincing indication that he is standing in godly manliness in defense of and fidelity to the true word of God and the grace and love and mercy of God. To reach sinners with compassion, yes, but to accommodate their sin is not the way to do it. I've heard him say things. I've seen what other people have written about him. I've seen the open letter from the bishops that are speaking quite in no uncertain terms against what he's doing. But I'll have to investigate it further. Well, all I can say is right now, the question was, how do you know that Pope Francis is the vicar of Christ? I don't. Okay.
Is he failing in his calling to be that vicar of Christ, would you say? Or does he not have the calling?
No. Well, okay. Well, I suspect that he's failing. I will look into it more.
Okay.
I'm not going to make a total judgment.
But does he have the calling?
He does. And this is why this is a good question. He does have that calling. And
that was my question.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you know that he has the calling? That he holds this office, even if he's abusing the office and not living up to the office? How do you know that he holds that office?
Because my reading of Corinthians, in that God appoints the rulers of this world, which I think is largely misunderstood. Hey, guess what? God appointed Satan to this world. He cast Satan and his demons down to this world and gave him reign over this world. It doesn't mean he appointed, it's like he sat up on his judgment desk up in heaven and said, I think that'll be a good ruler, that'll bring people to God. That's not what it's about. He appointed us to come and experience life in the carnate realm in our flesh. Life is suffering. Love is suffering. He allows evil into the world. He allows apostasy into the church. He appoints the rulers of this world to test us, if I want to put it crudely. We are called by Christ to discern the spirits of this world, whether they come from God or the devil. And God works in mysterious ways. He will allow us to be led astray so that we can experience firsthand the consequences of falling astray, so that we can wake up. Nothing is given on a golden platter, on a silver spoon. We are given free will for a reason. So that's how I see the meaning of Corinthians. And yes, he was appointed. It doesn't mean he's going to fulfill that appointment. And it doesn't mean that we have to take hook, line, and sinker what the title Vicar of Christ is saying. When God said test the spirits, he meant yourself, your neighbor, your teacher, the head of the Catholic Church, you name it. Weigh it out for yourself and decide if this is coming from God or the devil. So,
if you were to pray to God sincerely in your closed closet and just say to God, God, please take this thorn, Pope Francis, from my side. He annoys me. He's setting bad example, allegedly or ostensibly, and he's sowing seeds of confusion and this. Whatever you feel in your heart, you're sincere about your complaints about Pope Francis that God has allowed to be the Vicar of Christ. If you were to make that prayer sincerely, please remove this thorn from me. And God's answer was, my grace is sufficient. I'm not going to remove the thorn. Live with it. Deal with it. What would you say to God?
Well, first of all, I would say that I would not make that kind of a prayer. I don't see him as a thorn in my side. I don't see Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab as a thorn in my side. I'm pretty convinced of what spirit they come from. I am not taking any of that personally. What I suffer from, and what I worry about, is those that are under their sway. And so I will not address my prayers to ask him to remove Pope Francis or to take away the power of Klaus Schwab and the gang. But rather, I pray to God that my loved ones, my brothers and sisters, and people in this world, open their eyes and see what's really there. When Christ wept at Jerusalem, he was not weeping for the end of the world. He was not weeping for the destruction of Jerusalem. God creates whole worlds and takes them away. Every fleshly thing is born and dies. Christ was too wise for that. He was not weeping for the destruction of Jerusalem. What he was weeping for was the state of the souls of the individuals trapped in that zeitgeist leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem. He was weeping for their souls. The Christian way is to pray for one another and to hope that everyone comes to hear and see spiritually the truth of God and to not be deceived by the wicked forces in this world, and to not confuse good for evil and evil for good. That's it.
You remind me of a quote by St. Augustine, who talked about self-love. Intelligent self-love he defined as commending others to God, just as you are drawn to God. He said, this is true religion. This is the essence of true religion, is to commend your brothers and sisters to God. And he defines that true religion in terms of self-love. You love the good, you go toward the good, you want to arrive at that source of everything that's good, and you want your neighbor also to go with you and ahead of you. Right? So the prayer of humility says, let me be as holy as I must be, but don't let me resent it if others are holier than I am. This is the litany of humility. So, the first will be last, the last will be first, and we are encouraging others to go on in through the narrow gate ahead of us.